A single piece of coal sells for 800 million. But my neighbors are all scrambling to buy it. A cup of instant noodles is used as a bride price. The goddess I've had a crush on for 3 years is even desperate to marry me. But I'm not selling a single piece. All because the world's temperature dropped 70 degrees overnight. Most people either froze or starved to death. In those times, a single piece of coal could buy an entire villa. And I have awakened the ability of infinite synthesis. In the blink of an eye, it grows into a mature bean sprout. Moreover, it can fuse soybeans and meat. It can even create gigantic pieces of meat. And when the synthesis fails, I can get coal. This solved my problems in the apocalypse of food and heating. But in my past life, I wasn't so lucky. I was such a simp. I'd rather starve, just to give my food to the girl I worshipped. But not only was she ungrateful, she even teamed up with some mysterious man to murder me and steal my house and supplies. But after I died, I was unexpectedly reborn, half a month before the apocalypse began. When I woke up, I found my hand was emitting a strange red glow. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. No matter how I tried to shake it off, it wouldn't go away. Just then, I suddenly sneezed. The red light that was on my hand actually turned green, and it would flicker from large to small. I don't know if it was because of the green light, but my body quickly felt the symptoms of exhaustion, so I had no choice but to open the fridge. I need to eat something to get my energy back. But there's nothing in the fridge. Just when I was out of ideas, I noticed something. The roasted soybeans on the table. They were a snack I bought before the apocalypse. I figured I'd eat a few to tide me over for now. And then make a trip to the supermarket. With my hand glowing green, I picked up a soybean. Then I tossed it into my mouth. But unexpectedly, the soybean exploded in my mouth. After the explosion, a full-grown bean sprout appeared in my mouth. I pulled the sprout out of my mouth. I realized it must have transformed from that roasted soybean. As the green light on my hand faded, the fatigue in my body also vanished completely. I plucked a pod from the bean sprout. When I opened it, I was surprised to find fresh soybeans. As much as I wanted to explore this new power, I had more important things to do right now. And that was to get supplies sorted out for the apocalypse. So I headed out onto the street and rushed to the supermarket. On the way to the supermarket, I was still thinking about what had happened with the soybean. Suddenly, a familiar voice pulled me back to reality. I turned my head and saw. It was my goddess, Li Weina. Then I remembered those 3 years in my past life. I would have given her anything she wanted, even though I knew full well I was just her backup plan. But I never imagined she would be the one to get me killed in the end. I gripped my own arm tightly, trying to calm myself down, because now isn't the time for revenge. First, I have to deal with getting supplies. Just then, Li Weina invited me to go shopping with her. But I turned her down on the spot, because I knew she just wanted me to pay for things. I'm not going to be that kind of sucker anymore. Soon, I arrived at the largest in the Eastern District, the Wodamar supermarket. From what I remember, after the Ice Age began, the entire supermarket, overnight. In the end, they never found out who did it. So, I had no choice but to take advantage of the time before the apocalypse hit, to hoard as many supplies as I possibly could. Later, I went online to look for a survival checklist for the end of the world. It turns out, people needed a ton of things, but the balance in my bank account was tiny. I barely had enough savings to even feed myself, let alone hoard supplies. But right then, an opportunity came up. I got an ad for a loan on my phone. That gave me an idea. So, I downloaded 78 online loan apps on my phone. And then I went on a borrowing spree. After all, I wouldn't have to pay any of it back once the world ended. To make transporting the supplies easier, I also bought a luxury pickup truck. And I deliberately drove it right in front of Li Weina. She was completely shocked when she saw my truck. A poor guy like me was suddenly driving a luxury vehicle. I told her that my dad had started a business abroad and made a lot of money, and that he'd given me a ton of cash to buy it. Pretending I was some secret rich kid. After being shocked for half a second, Li Weina put on this pathetic look, saying that she had misjudged me earlier. She said she thought I didn't want her anymore. I pulled her into a hug, and told her how important she was to me. Just as she was about to invite me to have dinner and watch a movie, she suddenly realized I was already gone. That's because I had to rush home to unload my supplies. She asked me why I bought so many things. I made up an excuse, saying I just bought a bunch of stuff I liked. I also told her I had her birthday present ready, and that she should be a good girl and wait for me at home. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger, but I was just relieved that my plan to hoard supplies hadn't been discovered. I plan to settle the score with her. I'll settle the score after the apocalypse arrives. And I'm also going to hunt down the man who was with her when they murdered me. As I thought about it, I suddenly started looking forward to the apocalypse. In the days before the end of the world came, I not only bought a massive amount of food, but I also prepared medicine like antibiotics to deal with the power outages after the apocalypse. I got myself a generator. I also stockpiled enough fuel to last me for a year. I even modified my house's heating system, and reinforced the doors and windows while I was at it. For all this, I even specially cleared out a room just for storing supplies. By the time I had everything sorted out, there was only one day left until the global cooling began. The main event now was to properly study my own ability, because I knew that just relying on stockpiled supplies was far from enough to survive in a frozen apocalypse, and this ability to turn soybeans into plants would be my hope for survival. I confirmed that the soybeans created with my ability were safe to eat, so the next step was to research how to use this ability. During this time, I tried many different types of food. Some foods had no reaction at all, while others, like the soybeans, evolved from seed form into mature crops. But when it failed, there would be an explosion. After exploding, it would turn into a substance that looked a lot like coal. This substance could be burned. This meant I no longer had to worry about energy for heating. After numerous attempts, I figured out the conditions for activating my power. I just had to imagine myself as a part of nature, and I could freely summon the green light in my hands. But when I placed my hand on a piece of meat, no matter how I handled it, the meat in my hand showed no change. But just then, I remembered that I also had a kind of red light in my body. I focused my spirit and will, and the red light was successfully summoned. The moment the red light made contact with the meat in my hand made a crackling sound. This scared me so much I threw the meat on the ground. After calming down, I picked up the meat from the ground. I discovered the meat seemed to have been heated. This most likely meant that the purpose of the red light was to generate heat. But in the next second, I realized this wasn't ordinary heating. Instead, it was more like a process of matter disintegrating. Suddenly, a bold idea flashed through my mind. I immediately grabbed a handful of soybeans. The green light holding the soybeans represented the evolution of matter. The red light holding the pork represented disintegration. So, I combined the two. The next second, the pork grew to a ridiculously large size. But the soybeans in my hand had disappeared. I deduced that they must have fused with the meat. I repeatedly confirmed that the thing in my hand was indeed meat. Full of confidence, I prepared to try again. But every attempt ended in failure. Therefore, I could only set it aside to study slowly in the future. In any case, I still made some gains today. As long as I can thoroughly master this ability, I will become the man who stands at the pinnacle of this apocalypse. Just as I was admiring myself, I suddenly realized that having food alone wasn't enough. Without a weapon for self-defense, it would also be very difficult to survive. I hurriedly cleaned up the leftover scraps on the ground. I had to get my hands on a weapon before the temperature dropped. But just then, it began to snow lightly. This meant the low-temperature apocalypse was about to arrive. I didn't delay for a single moment. I changed my clothes and went out the door. But I had no way of buying a gun. At that moment, a man's voice caught my attention. The man in the distance looked a little familiar, with his over-the-top fashion sense and his street drifter vibe. If I wasn't mistaken, he had to be Lee Zi, the guy people called Brother Lee. I figured he'd have the connections to get a gun. So, I went up and greeted him enthusiastically. After I laid on the charm, I successfully got in with him and we became like brothers. Brother Lee promised to take me to get what I needed. Soon enough, he took me to a crime boss, a Mr. Lee. He explained to the boss that I wanted to get a few guns from him. After hearing this, the boss just laughed at me. He said I had some nerve coming to him personally just to buy a measly gun. Then, he pulled out a handgun and tossed it on the table. He told me to drop $6,000 and I could walk away with it. But that wasn't the kind I was looking for. I needed something a bit longer. The kind that came with a scope. The boss never would have imagined that I had the appetite for a sniper rifle. He said he only had this short kind, telling me to take it or leave it. Just then, Brother Lee stepped forward to calm the boss down. And he started telling him my story. After 2 hours of him spinning a complete yarn, the boss was actually moved by the story Brother Lee had just made up. Even though the story was a bit outrageous, the boss promised to get me a sniper rifle within a few days. Not only would he get me extra bullets, he'd even have his guys find me a semi-automatic one. Before I left, he even gave me the handgun for free. Seeing how generous he was, I decided to tell him about the recent strange weather. I told him to have his men stock up on supplies ahead of time. After a moment of stunned silence, the boss nodded and said he understood. Now, with the supplies and weapons ready, I could at least guarantee that I'd get through the early days of the apocalypse safely and comfortably. So, the next step is to really focus on honing my abilities. I need to completely solve the food problem as soon as possible. Just as I was lost in thought, I suddenly stepped on a patch of ice and my feet slipped out from under me. After doing a 3.5 revolution flip in the air, I crashed hard onto the ground. I felt a sharp pain in my thigh. I had no choice but to ask Brother Lee to take me to the hospital. After the doctor's diagnosis, it turned out to be just a simple fracture. I was told to stay for an hour of observation before getting my medicine. At that moment, Brother Lee said he had something to take care of and left first. I was left all alone in the hospital. Due to a sudden drop in temperature and a blizzard, the number of accidents skyrocketed. Even the hospital lobby was filled with patient beds. I looked around anxiously, waiting to get my medicine. But suddenly, my eyes lit up. A nurse was bustling about in front of me. I heard from others that she was actually the head nurse. I couldn't help but admire her. To be a head nurse at such a young age is truly impressive. Not only was she exceptionally capable, but her attitude towards patients was also very good. On top of that, she was also very beautiful. Just then, an old man next to me called her over. Then, while complaining about his back pain, he secretly stuck his phone under her skirt. But the head nurse was completely oblivious to this. Seeing this, the old man grew bolder. He put his arm around the head nurse and started groping her. Suddenly, a crutch knocked him to the ground. It was me. I couldn't just stand by and watch anymore. I pretended my hand slipped and threw my crutch to stop him. Then I picked up the old man's phone. The old man looked extremely nervous. He demanded that I give him his phone back. I showed him the photos he had secretly taken. And I threatened him, saying if he didn't want to be dragged to the police station by security, then he should get the hell out of my sight. Seeing this, the old man couldn't say anything. He immediately turned and chose to run away. But the head nurse was just confused. She wondered how an old man with a bad back could run so fast. Her innocence was almost frightening. In the end, I had no choice but to tell her that the man had been secretly filming her. And I let her decide whether or not to call the police. But the head nurse didn't seem too bothered by the incident. Instead, she pulled me into the nurse's station. She carefully bandaged the wound on my leg. She also thanked me for what had just happened. Finally, she told me to come back in a week to have the dressing changed. But deep down, I knew. We probably wouldn't see each other again after this week. The next day, the temperature dropped again. The blizzard was so bad that even the TV stations started reporting on the abnormal weather. Luckily, I was well prepared. The outside world had very little effect on me. For now, I didn't have to worry about survival. Just then, the homeowners group chat started buzzing. Luyan, the 2nd of June 401. Everyone's talking about this cold snap. But one homeowner named Marginal Man caught my attention. He claimed this wasn't an ordinary snowstorm. Marginal Man. He also said that an extremely cold apocalypse was coming. I wondered how he knew about the apocalypse. It seems I'll have to keep an eye on this person. Soon, the group chat descended into arguments. The homeowners were blaming property management for not clearing the snow. But only I knew that this snowstorm was simply beyond human capability to clear. Just then, a homeowner named Zhang Shuifa spoke up. He organized everyone to do their part and go out to shovel snow together. Come to think of it, I think I have some impression of this Zhang guy. But I had no intention of joining in. So I left the group chat. Just then, I got a message from Li Weina. I'm still waiting for you. She was asking me to go to the supermarket to help her buy some food. To convince me, she even sent a suggestive photo. This woman just to get me to run an errand for her. She was really pulling out all the stops. So I sent her a reply that would really get under her skin. 3 days passed quickly. This was the beginning of the apocalypse. People still had heating systems and the internet. And I could only spend my days scrolling through videos to pass the time. Not only was this making me feel a bit bored, but my leg injury also wasn't looking good. An injury to the bone would take at least a few months to heal. So, I could only continue scrolling through videos. Unexpectedly, I came across a video of a person whose wounds could heal automatically. At first, I couldn't believe it. Then, I had a great idea. I summoned a green light. And then I grabbed my fractured leg with it. I rhythmically controlled the light switch. But the results were disappointing. I thought the green light would help my wound heal. In an instant, a wave of drowsiness washed over me. I slowly closed my eyes and drifted off to sleep. And I had a strange dream. In the dream, I was a Native American, galloping across the grasslands on a white ram. But then I had an accident and fell to the ground. Just like before, the fall resulted in a broken bone. But then, something miraculous happened. A ram was licking my wound over and over. Disgusted by its saliva, I pushed the ram away. But to my surprise, the ram got angry. It stuck out its long tongue and lifted me into the air. Then, its tongue started emitting that familiar green light. I was so startled by this that I woke up and sat bolt upright. But then I noticed something. A green light was emanating from my leg. I immediately cut off the bandages on my leg. To my surprise, I found that the broken bone had completely healed. Automatic self-healing. So, I decided to test it again. I picked up a kitchen knife and held it to my hand. And then, I made a light cut. Blood trickled from the cut on my finger. Then, I summoned the green light. I was very satisfied with the result. It looks like I've gained another ability. Soon, I fell asleep again. While I was fast asleep, there was a knock at the door. Still half asleep, I opened the door. It was Brother Lee, delivering my sniper rifle. He also said the boss wanted to thank me. Thanks to my warning, they were able to stockpile supplies in advance. He also told me something strange. It was about the Walmart supermarket. Someone cleared it out completely last night. Just as I remembered. So, it happened after all. After Brother Lee left, I still couldn't figure it out. How did they manage to clear out the whole place in one night? In the novels and manga I used to read, those superpowered people who can suck anything into another dimension, they could probably pull it off. Does this mean that people with spatial abilities really exist? So I decided to study my own ability more closely. Right now, my ability can interact with various food ingredients to multiply them, but the success rate is extremely low. I have to figure out how to use it today. After 12 hours of intense research, I finally started to get the hang of it. It turns out that when I output the green light, its energy isn't constant. Each type of food requires a different corresponding energy level. If it doesn't match, it fails. This pattern reminded me of that super popular online music and dance game from over 10 years ago. I used up, down, left, and right to represent the energy levels, and then had to hit that critical point right at the end. With a poof, the soybean in my hand turned into a bean sprout. After I mastered plants and vegetables, next up was meat. I continued to try and combine them based on my previous experience, but it was incredibly difficult. After countless attempts, I finally succeeded in synthesizing an oversized chicken leg. By then, my stamina was completely drained, and my stomach was growling with hunger. The good news was, I had finally figured out how to synthesize meat. It was now the 4th day of the blizzard disaster. I learned from the news broadcast that transportation and power grids around the world were beginning to collapse. Furthermore, according to an insider in the homeowners group chat, a lot of armored cars and tanks were entering the city. It seemed very likely that a war was about to break out. I do recall something like that happening. Just then, Zhang Shuiyu popped up again. He suggested that everyone should stick together. Homeowners who currently have plenty of food stocked up could donate a portion of it to help others who are struggling. At that, everyone immediately started discussing it. After a bit of whispering amongst themselves, the homeowners finally reached a consensus to help one another. Then, Zhang Shuiyu proposed forming a temporary homeowners committee to be in charge of coordinating and distributing the donated supplies. I knew this so-called temporary committee was just a scheme to scam homeowners out of their food and supplies. It was day 5 of the apocalypse. The temperature had already dropped to negative 40 degrees. The heating system had also completely failed due to the extreme weather. Everyone was scrambling for ways to stay warm and maintain their body heat. But I wasn't worried in the slightest. Not only did I have plenty of fuel for heating, I also had ice-cold Coke and delicious food. My daily pastime was playing Black Myth, Wukong. But just then, I got a call from an unknown number. Turns out, it was the temporary homeowners committee calling me. They told me to go clear the parking lot and then sign in, to avoid getting on my neighbor's bad side for now, and more importantly, to keep them from discovering too soon that I was living like a king in my apartment. I obediently went along and shoveled snow with them. But the situation was grim. The heavy snow had already completely buried the first floor. Even the main entrance was pressed shut by the snow. The others waved me over to help open the door. As we all pushed together, the door was forced open. A blast of freezing air hit us in the face. Going out in this weather would definitely lead to severe frostbite. You could even freeze to death. Everyone there realized this, and they were ready to give up on the idea of clearing the snow. But unexpectedly, some fearless idiot volunteered to go out and shovel. I took a closer look and saw it was Brother Lee. Of course, this is exactly the kind of thing only a reckless person would do. The crowd tried to talk him out of it, but brave Brother Lee wasn't afraid of a little hardship. He just started digging at the snow with both hands. That's the hand speed of someone single for 20 years, alright. He quickly dug a hole through the thick snow. The next second, Brother Lee's cries for help came from inside the hole. Everyone immediately pulled him out. Then, they closed the main gate. Brother Lee was now shivering from head to toe. Just then, I suggested that the people here should first go to the parking garage to sign in with the person in charge. We could only wait for the snow to stop before figuring something out. Because at this point, the snowdrift was already beyond what could be cleared by hand. Soon, everyone had gathered in the underground parking garage. Zhang Shuiyu announced that this place would be designated as the spot for donating and distributing supplies. In the end, he repeatedly thanked everyone for their cooperation. Because of everyone's generous donations, many residents in need were helped. The residents were very pleased with this decision, but I, knowing everything in advance, could only scoff to myself. Just watch. The disaster isn't going to stop. It won't be long before you all regret this. Just then, in the noisy crowd, I spotted the head nurse from the hospital. She accidentally bumped into someone and was about to fall. I immediately rushed forward and caught her. When she recognized me, she was surprisingly curious as to why my leg had healed so quickly. In response, I could only give an awkward smile. I quickly explained that I've always healed fast, ever since I was a kid. After hearing that, the head nurse praised me profusely. At that moment, I offered to help carry her things. Unexpectedly, the box in her hands was extremely heavy. She explained that the box was mainly filled with medical supplies to be donated. She then suggested she could just carry it herself. By this point, I was already completely charmed by her. I didn't feel the weight of the box at all. She told me not to push myself. because she was much stronger than most guys. I asked if she'd always been that strong, even as a kid. But she just stammered, as if she had some kind of unspeakable secret. I looked at her, confused. She looked flustered and said something had happened, but she couldn't quite explain what. So, she had no choice but to change the subject and ask for my name. My name is Han Feng. I'm Jin Shui. It's nice to meet you. I thought she was just adorable. So, the two of us started walking and chatting. But unexpectedly, she bumped into a burly guy standing nearby and fell right next to me. The two of us had a rather close encounter. She immediately let go and apologized to me. But just then, Li Weina appeared behind me. Without a word, she wrapped her arm around mine. Seeing this, Jin Shui immediately took the things from my hands, saying she didn't want to disturb us as she hurried away. I asked Li Weina what she wanted with me. She actually had the nerve to ask if I had any spare food at my place. Hearing that, I gave her a wicked smile and told her that even if I didn't have any extra, I would still share some with her. But about that last message I sent her, she still hadn't replied. I asked her if she wanted to come to my place and keep me company for a few days. At first, Li Weina looked shocked. Then she pulled away from my grasp, explaining that at the time, she thought I meant keeping me company by chatting online. Seeing her play so dumb, I turned around, ready to just head home. But she suddenly grabbed my clothes and even had the nerve to say I had change. You know that when it comes to relationships, I'm very serious. I don't want people to think that I'm only with you because you have money now. So, can you please give me some more time? With acting skills like that, winning Best Supporting Actress would be no problem at all. If I hadn't already died once, I might have actually believed her. But in order to find the man behind her, I really want to just rip that ugly mask right off her face. But then, a better idea came to me. What if I just do what I did before I was reborn and have Li Weina once again bring that man over here? Why should I go to the trouble of finding him myself? So, I promised her that I'd send food over tomorrow. And with that, we waved goodbye. Li Weina thought she had me wrapped around her little finger. Little did she know, she was the real fool. Soon, another 2 days had passed. I didn't give her a single bit of the food I promised. And I didn't reply to a single one of her messages. I just hid in my warm room, feasting away. I was eating juicy, tender barbecue. This kind of hot food is perfect for this weather. I washed it down with an ice-cold soda. I knew that Li Weina would come knocking on my door soon enough. And when she does, she'll see how I get my revenge. Ever since this frozen apocalypse began, I've been studying my abilities. After days of extensive experiments, I've confirmed 2 things. The first is that meat won't grow infinitely large. Second, meat, just like soybeans, can be infinitely recycled. Before, whenever I'd grow a new soybean sprout, I'd take half the soybeans and use them to grow new sprouts, while I ate the other half. Using that same principle, I tried it with meat. Under the effect of 2 types of light, half a piece of beef and some soybeans yielded an almost complete piece of beef. Then, I took half of that piece of beef and tried the same process all over again. The result was still the same. This meant I could keep this up infinitely, getting a continuous supply of fresh meat. This pretty much solved the food problem for good. A few more days passed. By then, the temperature had already dropped to negative 42 degrees. The TV stations were reporting on the situation outside. It was far from optimistic. But I knew the real situation was far worse than what the media was reporting. Suddenly, a loud bang came from outside. I immediately pulled open the curtains and saw an explosion in the distance. This was already the 7th explosion in the past few days. Just as I was wondering what on earth was happening outside, suddenly, a large number of military helicopters flew over my head. I realized the situation outside was also causing panic among the residents. I knew they were all gathering in the underground parking garage to trade for necessary supplies and food. But there were also many residents taking the opportunity to rip people off. So, quite a few fights had broken out. Just then, in the residences group chat, a notice told people in need to go to the underground parking garage to receive free supplies. So I eagerly headed downstairs and went to the underground parking garage. I was willing to leave my warm room just to get some information, because in my memory from my past life, a riot broke out right in this residential complex. If I remember correctly, I think it had something to do with these people. But what I couldn't figure out was, they were actually distributing supplies. They weren't tricking the residents out of their own supplies. Anyway, my plan for now is to first scope out the real situation. There were a ton of people at the scene. There really were a lot of families in need. Just then, a dispute broke out among the people getting supplies up ahead. It turned out a man had previously contributed several large boxes of food. Right now, they've only given out a tiny bit of stuff. Zhang Shuiyu said that after the disaster is over, he'll pay it back double. Just then, the people queuing up behind them started criticizing the man, telling him not to be so greedy and hold up everyone else. Seeing this, I could only chuckle to myself. I thought, in a situation like this, there's no way I'm letting you guys take back your supplies. But these people, putting themselves on a moral high ground, to criticize someone who donated more food, they have absolutely no shame. Unexpectedly, the person next to me actually said my thoughts out loud. I took a closer look, and it was actually Brother Lee. He looked so weak, like he'd had the life drained out of him. I greeted him, and asked how he'd been doing lately. Brother Lee answered me in a weak voice. He said that right now, he just felt a bit weak, anxious, and shaky. It turns out he's been surviving on just water for the past few days. Back then, with the intention of helping people, he donated most of his supplies to the committee. But then his own food reserves at home ran out. The snowstorm was still going on, and the supplies the committee was handing out were just a tiny amount. Now, all he can do is regret not keeping more supplies for himself back then. Just then, I thought of a great idea. I needed Brother Lee to do me a favor. Brother Lee was stunned when he heard my reward offer. He confirmed with me, so you're saying if this works out, I'll get 4 packs of instant noodles and 2 sausages? After I gave him a definite yes, Brother Lee looked at me like I was a lifesaver. He was so moved he burst into tears. He patted my shoulder firmly, and told me not to worry. A small thing like this? He's got it covered. After we reached an agreement, Brother Lee turned around and went to get his supplies first. Turns out, I was paying for it with food, and I put Brother Lee in charge of gathering information, even though I felt a little bad for him. What's more important than comfortably lounging on my couch at home, eating good food and playing games? Just as I was about to head home, a hand suddenly came out of nowhere, and slapped me across the face with a loud smack. And me, in my diaper. I completely soaked it. Unexpectedly, it was Li Weina who spoke first. Han Feng, I am so disappointed in you. I touched my red, swollen cheek, thinking to myself, I haven't even settled the score with her from my past life. And now she goes and slaps me for no reason. Does she really think I'm a pushover? There's no way I could just let this slide. Faced with her relentless questioning, I decided to teach her a lesson. I let out a long sigh. First, I told her I was sorry. Then, I started to tell her what happened. The supplies that I had placed by the door that day, while I was going back to my room to grab the key, were taken by someone. After hearing my story, Li Weina asked if I had any supplies left. I put on a troubled expression, and explained that I didn't have much food left. Even if I only ate 1 meal a day, it would only last me a few more days. When Li Weina found out I still had some food, it was as if she saw a glimmer of hope. She then suggested that I eat only once every 2 days, and give half of the food to her. That way, the two of us could get through this disaster together. Unbelievable. Her selfish calculations were practically hitting me in the face. I thought to myself, how could she even say something like that? But then again, this was all within my expectations. After all, in her eyes, I'm just a tool to be used. Whenever she needs something, that's all. So, I decided to play along. I agreed to her request. Li Weina wanted me to bring the food down right away, but I told her I had to go back and pack a few things first, and that I would message her tonight. Only then did Li Weina leave, satisfied. Before she left, I reminded her to wait for my message tonight. Soon, evening arrived. Li Weina sent me multiple messages. As usual, I didn't reply to a single one. What are you doing? She was now shivering from the cold downstairs from my apartment, because the weather was just too cold. The elevator wasn't working properly either. So, Li Weina decided to take the stairs to come find me. She complained as she climbed. I'm exhausted. I've been starving these past few days. I don't know how much time passed, but she was finally about to reach my floor. But just then, the emergency light overhead, with a pop, suddenly went out. The sudden darkness made her feel uneasy. At that moment, a sound came from upstairs. She looked up. A black trash bag was falling from the sky. Before she even had a chance to react, the bag was right in front of her eyes. With a thud, just as the lights came back on, the air filled with a white powder. Li Weina called out my name while coughing. I apologized to her over and over. I explained that I had just fallen asleep, and when I saw her message, I grabbed the supplies and ran down. I said I didn't expect the hallway light to suddenly go out, and that I bumped into the railing and lost my grip on the flour. And that's what caused this accident. Li Weina struggled to clean the sticky flour off herself, muttering, "This is so disgusting." Meanwhile, I was secretly gloating. I had prepared all of this for her on purpose. Then, I handed her a bag of supplies. She opened it and saw it was full of leftovers and scraps. It was stuff that even a dog might not eat. Of course, Li Weina looked down on it. She was completely disgusted by the food. Since she was so disgusted, I reached out to take the bag back. But unexpectedly, she suddenly clutched the bag tightly to her chest. Who said I don't want it? Seeing this, I couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. Was this the goddess I once would have done anything to win over? Li Weina, however, couldn't care less about any of that right now. She was busy trying to figure out how to eat the rotten apples. And before I knew it, she even snatched the bag of flour from my hands. She opened it, and was thrilled to find there was still half a bag left. So, satisfied, she headed home. But I knew that garbage was enough to give her an upset stomach for days. And in this weather, she wouldn't be able to wash up. So she'd just have to stay covered in all that flour. I started walking home, humming a little tune. But just then, I stopped in my tracks. I had a feeling someone was behind me. I continued into the stairwell. But no sooner had I stepped inside than a figure appeared right behind me. As it drew closer, I grabbed it in a flash and slammed it to the ground. I raised my fist, ready to give it a beating. But when I got a clear look at its face, I stopped myself just in time, because I realized the person who'd been secretly following me was a girl. I kept questioning her, demanding to know what she wanted. But no matter what I did, she wouldn't say a single word. Seeing that the nice approach wasn't working, it looked like I'd have to use unconventional methods. I raised my hands and hovered them over her body, threatening that if she still refused to talk, I would strip off all her clothes. Unexpectedly, the girl was exceptionally calm. She didn't show a hint of fear, seeing that it wasn't working. So, I decided to leave. Before I left, I told her to hurry up and go home, and stop playing pranks. Just as I was about to leave, the girl grabbed my clothes. I told her that if she didn't say something soon, I was really going to leave. Just then, she raised her hand and pointed in another direction, motioning for me to follow her. A few moments later, I found myself in her room. But when I walked in, I was shocked. Just like me, she hadn't just stockpiled a ton of supplies in advance. She'd also modified her room's heating system. Her living conditions were even better than mine. Confused, I asked her if she'd known about the blizzard all along. She just nodded silently, and slowly uttered a few words. Calculation results. Ice Age. She pulled down a monitor from the ceiling, showing that she had already posted about it in the group chat. It all clicked in an instant. So she was the one with the screen name The Outsider. But what I couldn't figure out was, why did she bring me to her place? Couldn't have been just to tell me this, right? She seemed to sense my confusion. Once again, she raised her hand and pointed forward. The monitor behind me instantly lit up. On the screen was surveillance footage of me, before the apocalypse hit, from when I stockpiled supplies and moved them home, to me buying all that fuel. And even when Brother Lee brought me those weapons, everything had been recorded. I realized she had been watching me this whole time. But when I turned around, she had already taken off her heavy outer clothes, leaving only a thin shirt on. Blushing, I asked her why she was suddenly taking off her clothes. She just looked at me blankly and said one word, hot. I quickly stopped her from taking anything else off. A moment later, we were both sitting on the sofa. She told me her true intentions. It turned out that before the apocalypse, she had become suspicious of me for hoarding supplies. That's why she decided to keep me under surveillance. And the main purpose of watching me was to determine whether there was any possibility for us to cooperate. But when I asked what kind of cooperation, the girl moved closer to me without saying a word, and started fumbling for something underneath where I was sitting. The sudden move made my face turn red. She pulled out a machine from under the sofa, and looked at me pitifully, asking me to teach her how to use the generator. After my patient instruction, the machine started up. Just when I thought it was all over, she unexpectedly moved closer to me again, and pointed in another direction. This time, she wanted me to teach her how to adjust the water heater. Then, I helped her organize the refrigerator. After that, I helped her connect the kitchen gas line. And to top it all off, she even wanted me to teach her how to cook. In the end, I was the one who cooked a delicious meal. And just like that, we had dinner together. I slammed my hand on the table. How did I become a full-time nanny? This girl's ability to take care of herself is just awful. I hadn't even finished my sentence when the girl immediately fell asleep. I couldn't help but mutter to myself, falling asleep in the middle of a meal. She doesn't have her guard up around me at all. I had no choice but to carry her to bed and cover her with a blanket. Finally, I dragged my exhausted body away. This is no different from taking care of a kid. I just want to go home and get some proper sleep. The next day, I was woken up by a knock on the door before dawn. Industrial. 2 tape. She brought me some supplies. She had come over this time with another thing she needed my help with. She pointed to the generator beside her, and asked me to teach her how to use it one more time. After a few days of interaction, I was sure that the young woman living upstairs from me was completely hopeless when it came to everyday life. Not only did she lack a lot of common sense, but she also seemed really eager to learn practical skills. She would drag me over to her place every day to teach her. Her cooking skills were also visibly improving. Normally, the food she made, I doubt even a dog would eat it. But in this apocalypse, plenty of people would be fighting over it. I tried asking for her name. She said her name was the wielder of the Tyrant's Eye, a name that cringy made me immediately regret asking. I just silently lowered my head and kept eating. Meanwhile, at the supply distribution point in the underground parking garage, an argument broke out over unfair distribution. It even escalated into people fighting over food. Tensions between the neighbors finally exploded. Everyone was fighting tooth and nail for the supplies, getting beaten and bloodied. Gradually, the conflict grew more and more violent. Just then, Zhang Shuiyu suddenly appeared. Without a word, he cranked up the volume on a loudspeaker. A piercing screech. The harsh sound got everyone's attention. Zhang Shuiyu said coldly, "Everyone, have you had enough?" He helped one of the injured men to his feet and asked everyone there, over this last little bit of supplies. Beating each other bloody. Don't you think that's pathetic? The people there started to blame Zhang Shuiyu. They said it was because what they received wasn't equal to what they had donated. And that's what caused the conflict. After listening, Zhang Shuiyu laid out the logic for them. Is it because the supplies being handed out aren't enough to eat? And the donated supplies have run out? So you have to fight for what little is left? That's the situation right now, isn't it? And that's why he found it so pathetic. Zhang Shuiyu was mocking the people who were fighting. The way they fight over food. They deserve to starve to death. Then, he told everyone to think carefully about who was truly responsible for this situation. After speaking, he picked up the bread from the ground, saying he would help them remember. A loaf of bread that originally cost a few bucks was jacked up to tens, even hundreds, by those with plenty of supplies. And to squeeze every last drop from them, a single loaf of bread was even split into fifths, or even tenths, to be auctioned off. In the end, they successfully profited from the disaster. And not only did ordinary people spend all their money on this food, they even started fighting amongst themselves over the last remaining supplies. The laughable thing is, they're the ones who had extra supplies but wouldn't donate. And they're the ones who maliciously jacked up the prices. But in the end, we're the ones who are starving to death. Is that really fair? So, Zhang Shuiyu called on everyone, saying the most important thing to do right now is to unite. Go up there and take back the supplies that belong to you. His words ignited the crowd's desire to plunder. Most people agreed with Zhang Shuiyu's idea. More and more people started to support his approach. One by one, they all wanted to go up there and take back the supplies that should have been theirs. Little did they know, this was exactly what he wanted. After witnessing the whole thing, Li Jie immediately sent me a message to report the situation. I was woken up by my phone's notification sound. I picked it up and saw. It was a message from Li Jie. He told me that the residents, instigated by Zhang Shuiyu, were going door to door, picking locks and robbing other people's supplies. I got goosebumps all over when I heard the news. Li Jie also said they were all carrying weapons. He warned me to hide if I could, and to absolutely not confront them head on. So, I quickly locked the door, and then drew the curtains. I tried to calm myself down first. I never expected things to escalate like this. Although I got a couple of guns to handle a crisis. If this is some kind of organized operation, if my supplies are ever exposed, facing these crazed neighbors, I'm afraid I'll be devoured until there's nothing left. In any case, I need to finish my preparations now. I grabbed some tools from the storage room, and then set up a simple trap on the door. Just as I was about to finish, something unexpected happened. With a loud snap, the lights inside went out as the power was cut. Then, I heard a commotion coming from outside. Turns out, it wasn't just my house. The power was out for every single home in the entire complex. This was all within my expectations. It was because of the blizzard, combined with the grid being overloaded from everyone using electricity for heat. That's what ultimately led to the massive blackout. And with the deep snow and freezing temperatures outside, it was impossible to repair the equipment. I quickly grabbed a barrel of fuel and poured it all into the generator, because I knew this power and internet outage might be permanent. Once the residents realize that the power is never coming back on, the panic will likely lead to even worse riots. When that happens, that's when the real hell begins. That's why I have to start the generator immediately and get ready to deal with the riots. Half an hour before the blackout, Li Weina was enjoying a tasty bowl of instant noodles. She'd shacked up with some guy she met somewhere. She was listening to him brag about his exploits while she ate. It turned out this man in front of her, not long after the apocalypse began, had paid 50 times the going rate to buy up all the supplies from 1,000 of the residents. He spent 500,000 on the physical goods alone. So, after getting his hands on the supplies, he turned right around and auctioned off a portion of them. Most people were scrambling to buy from him. In the end, the man actually made a tidy profit. So he was the one profiteering from the disaster. After bragging for a while, he reached out and stroked Li Weina's cheek. What do you think? Following me was the right choice, wasn't it? Li Weina couldn't care less about all that. Right now, whoever gave her food was her husband. The man was gloating inwardly. He believed that as long as he had supplies, he could do whatever he wanted with this woman. Just then, a commotion was heard from outside the door. This caught the man's attention. To figure out what was going on, he pressed his ear tightly against the door, trying to hear what the people outside were arguing about. It turned out the neighbors had discovered he was the one profiteering from the disaster. As a result, he had become their special target. With a loud bang, the sudden impact startled the man. He realized the people outside were trying to break down his door. But before the man could even react, with a crash, the door had already been successfully torn down. Based on the reflection from the door, a group of armed people was standing outside. This was clearly a solid iron hammer, but in my hands, it became as bouncy as jello. This must have something to do with the purple light coming from my hand. You see, half an hour ago, in order to fend off the rioting neighbors, I was installing an electric shock device on the main door. But no matter how much I tinkered with it, the device just wouldn't power on. It even burst into flames when I wasn't looking. I immediately dropped my tools and started to put out the fire. If only I had an internet connection right now. Just then, someone knocked on my door. I cautiously crept up to the peephole. Through it, I saw a familiar height and a silly tuft of hair sticking up. It was the little blue-haired loli I had met a few days ago. She was outside, about to ask me for help again. Muttering to myself, I was about to open the door. But in my past life, it was because of this one simple act that I let the wolf into the house and got myself killed. I let go of the hand I was about to use to open the door. I warned the little girl that some of the residents had started prying open doors to loot supplies. I told her to hurry home, and that I wouldn't be opening the door for her. But unexpectedly, the little girl kept knocking. I don't know how long she knocked for. She finally gave up trying to knock, but sat down in front of the door, unwilling to leave. Just then, she heard other people's voices. Hurry up, don't let someone else beat us to it. How many units on the 18th floor have people home? Who cares? Let's just hit them one by one. It was the rioting neighbors. They had already reached my floor. The white-haired man proposed that the 2 units in here were theirs. He grabbed a crowbar and walked to my door. He knocked while saying, "Hello, we're here to deliver some supplies." Hello? Is anyone home? I clamped my hand tightly over the little girl's mouth, terrified she would make the slightest sound. Suddenly, the rhythmic knocking turned into the violent thud of them ramming the door. I quietly comforted the little girl, telling her not to be afraid. My front door is reinforced. They were trying to force the door open. A moment later, the people outside stopped trying to break in. They couldn't figure out why this door was so sturdy. It couldn't even break it down. So they decided to pry open the neighbor's door first. Let's mark this one for now. I was so thankful I had reinforced the door and the handle. I realized I had forgotten something. I had been so afraid they would notice someone was home that I had nearly suffocated the little girl. After waiting for half an hour, it finally fell silent outside. It seemed those people were really gone. I picked up the tools on the floor and continued working. Once I get this thing working, the next time they dare to raid us, I'll zap them to death. The little loli asked what I was doing. I replied that it was a defensive measure that used electric shocks. I figured she wouldn't understand even if I told her. Even I don't really get it myself. Why is this stupid electric shock device so hard to set up? To my surprise, the little loli immediately explained the principle behind it. The anti-theft system uses electric current and potential difference. She even said it was very simple. So, under her guidance, I started building the device step by step. A moment later, the setup was complete. The doorknob was successfully electrified. It actually worked. How do you know all this? The evil eye of the tyrant has the power to see through all the truths of this world. Never mind, I asked. While I was tidying up the house, I asked her what she needed my help with this time. I saw her take a bunch of things out of her pocket. The evil eye of the tyrant will reside here. By the time I processed what she said, I was stunned. There was absolutely no way I could allow that. I told her to go back home right now. Just then, I tripped over the messy wires on the floor. I face-planted right into a pile of junk in front of me. But the strange thing was, a purple light I had never seen before appeared from my hands. Even though I crashed into the coffee table, I didn't feel any pain. What I couldn't understand was that my coffee table had turned all soft and squishy. The originally square coffee table had turned into the consistency of fabric. I realized, it must have been the purple light that made the coffee table like this. Even things like the toolbox had turned soft. The hard hammer had turned into a bouncy, jelly-like substance. In other words, this purple light can soften objects. Even now, I still don't understand what's going on. It was only then that I realized the little loli was staring at me. Oh crap, I forgot there was someone else in the house. Just then, the little loli looked like she wanted to say something, but hesitated. After I learned how to materialize a giant chicken leg out of thin air, I developed another new ability. By combining the purple and green light, I can harden any object. Using this power, I've hardened all the walls in the entire house. Now, in this apocalypse, no one will be able to break through my walls. Turns out, just a few hours ago, a little blue-haired loli suddenly showed up at my house and wanted to move in. While I was trying to convince her to leave, I accidentally fell. That fall awakened my purple light ability. Red represents disintegration, green represents healing, and purple can soften things. Even a rock-hard hammer can become as soft and jiggly as gelatin. While I was still lost in confusion, I realized the little loli had witnessed everything. I was still trying to come up with an excuse to explain it all, when the next second, she suddenly stood up and gave me a look of pure admiration. Are you also a messenger chosen by the evil eye of the true king? Faced with her delusional question, I had no choice but to play along. Yeah, that's right. I am also a subordinate chosen by the great lord of evil. That's why these strange phenomena happen to me sometimes. On the outside, I was panicking. But on the inside, I was panicking even more. This girl's brain is definitely wired differently. I just hoped I could fool her. The next second, the little lowly held up her hand to stop me from talking. I thought my ridiculous excuse wasn't going to work. But unexpectedly, she suggested, as we are both messengers, we should support each other. Therefore, this resting chamber ought to be shared. And with that, she walked right into the room on her own. Before I could even get a word of refusal out, with a slam, she shut the bedroom door. And just like that, she was living with me. At this point, there was nothing I could do about it. I just had to let her be. That's when I noticed the floppy hammer in my hand. I wondered what that purple light from earlier was all about. Does it just make things soft? After that whole incident, I realized I had more than just those two kinds of light powers. The others just hadn't been discovered yet. The purple light had appeared when I tripped over a cord, and was about to crash into the coffee table. I tried to recall how I felt in that moment. A moment later, when I opened my eyes, the purple light appeared in my hand again. Under the purple light's glow, the cord in my hand became incredibly soft. So, I decided to grab a kitchen knife, to try it on something else. Under the effect of the purple light, the kitchen knife in my hand started to change, too. I couldn't believe it even worked on steel. I chopped at my arm with the softened knife, and I didn't feel a thing. It felt just like jelly. After that, I tried it on a bunch of other things. And I finally figured out how the purple light works. The more I used the purple light, the softer the object got. Other than that, there were no other changes. This power is pretty useless, isn't it? I thought. But then, I had a great idea. What if I combined the two lights? What would happen then? So, I summoned the green light. Slowly, the purple and green lights began to merge. I held up the kitchen knife. And, imitating Ichigo Kurosaki, I yelled, Bankai. The once soft knife turned back to normal. I looked at the now hard kitchen knife, and thought, it just changed back like that? That's when I noticed a tissue nearby. It had been hit by both the purple and green light. Even the tissue became unusually tough. I used all my strength, but I couldn't tear it apart. I finally understood how it worked. Mixing the two kinds of light can change a material's toughness. And the level of hardness was just insane. Suddenly, an idea struck me. A bold idea formed in my mind. Meanwhile, on the other side, on my floor, the ones who had been looting supplies from every apartment, a few of my rioting neighbors were returning with their loot. Just as they were about to leave, one of them noticed something strange. Hey, look, behind you. The white-haired guy turned around, and saw the wall with the sign for the 18th floor was squirming. Then, a face appeared on the wall. The face's expression grew more and more twisted. It even got closer and closer to the white-haired neighbor. And to make things even crazier, it stuck out two hands, looking just like a ghost, waving its arms wildly in front of them. Clearly, they thought they were seeing a ghost. They screamed and ran. Then, the face started making a strange sound. Oh, crap, I can't breathe. Turns out, the face was mine. I was using the purple light to soften the wall, and then mixing it with the green light. With a loud thud, the reinforced wall was finally complete. To test its hardness, I dragged over a sledgehammer that weighed dozens of kilograms. I struggled to lift the sledgehammer. Time to test out the hardened wall. Here goes. I slammed the sledgehammer against the wall with all my might. The blows were so loud, you could even hear the banging from outside. After hammering it again and again, the result was truly surprising. It was unbelievable, seriously. I didn't even manage to chip off a piece of the plaster. I was very satisfied with the result. The scene shifts to the parking lot. The people from the Provisional Owners Committee were taking stock of the supplies looted from the other residents. Just then,